Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, live today on Monday, May 13th, to bring you guys another rundown of some great and intriguing NFL stories we have on today's agenda. Starting off today, just a few hours ago, the massive extension given to Lions quarterback Jared Goff. We're going to talk about the details on that deal. Plus, this past weekend was rookie minicamp for a lot of teams. Caleb Williams, the number one overall pick, impressing a lot of people in those 3 days. Plus, a former teammate of Brock Purdy speaks on why he believes Brock Purdy deserves a massive extension this offseason or potentially next offseason. All of that coming up on today's show. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And before I start, I want to remind you guys, before I talk about anything, if you have any questions or comments, to use the tip and donations link you see on your screen, GSMCPodcast.net. By using this, I'm able to see your question pop up on my screen. I can read the question out loud and then just get your guys' perspective on anything we're talking about or anything I say. It's a lot more engaging and it's a massive help for the show. So again, that link is on your screen, GSMCPodcast.net. But without further ado, I mentioned just the biggest news that dropped a few hours ago while I was preparing my notes for tomorrow's show. This just dropped and I had to make a couple changes. Jared Goff gets that massive extension we were talking about last week. I want to say it was Friday that we mentioned it. Their general manager, Brad Holmes, talked about wanting to get the extension done for the three biggest names arguably on the Lions team. Or I should say three of the four. He extended Amon-Ra St. Brown. They extended Penei Sewell. Now it just really needed to be all about Jared Goff. And Brad Holmes mentioned that he would have loved for the Lions to extend all three of them at the same time. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell got their extensions rather quickly. But Jared Goff, not to say that he was left to hang and dry out, like separated from Amon-Ra and Penei Sewell, but there was some questions there about Jared Goff and why they couldn't get everything accustomed. Maybe was Jared Goff asking for too much money. Maybe the Lions had a disagreement on how much he was worth. But in the end, it got done just a couple of days later. On that deal, it was reported by Adam Schefter of ESPN, and it is a massive 4-year, $212 million deal with $170 million guaranteed. That new deal officially makes Jared Goff the highest paid Lion in their history. $170 million guaranteed is a whopping number there for the number one overall pick, formerly of the Los Angeles Rams. Now, 4 years, $212 million. You do some math on that, you divide it, and you get to about $53 million per year. So Jared Goff, with his new deal, doesn't reset the market. He actually becomes the second highest paid quarterback on an average year basis, earning $53 million, sliding in there right behind Joe Burrow's $55 million per year. He surpassed Justin Herbert, who is at $52.5 million, but his deal had more total value than Jared Goff's, but because his was a 5-year deal, obviously it makes the average per year a bit less. But regardless of all of that, the biggest thing that Brad Holmes, talking about Wednesday, mentioning this topic, that he really emphasized was that Jared Goff earned this contract extension. I talked more in detail about it on Friday, all the accolades, but, you know, a lot of personal career highs this past season for Jared Goff, completion percentage, yards, touchdowns, and all that, earning the Lions' first NFC North title since 1993, and also their first playoff game, really, since 1991, plus all others that I listed on Friday. So it was a massive year for Jared Goff, and not to say that, depending on how you look at it, was it a prove-it year? Maybe for some, seeing how the first couple years went there in Detroit. Now you're getting a little bit better. How much longer do you have this window of, you know, just feeling everything out? And the Lions just really blew everyone's expectations out of the water, earning a trip to the NFC Championship game, and probably should have won. I thought they were going to win that game. just on how they started, how dominant their run game was. I think they're inexperienced, other than Jared Goff, who's 29 years old, showed really in that moment. A lot of the guys, Aiden Hutchinson, Penny Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, aren't really used to those big games. I just mentioned how long it's been for the whole Lions organization to just even be in the playoffs. It's been 30 plus years, so a whole brand new experience for them. And I think Jared Goff, on top of all the talent that comes to your mind when you're thinking of the Lions, like I just mentioned, on offense, on defense with Aiden Hutchinson, some of the younger guys they drafted, with Brian Branch leading that rookie class, a lot of the attention and I would say praise really goes to those guys, and I don't think Jared Goff gets enough credit for really going through this journey from the Rams, being traded to Detroit, where at the time people were just looking at it as a way to just get rid of Jared Goff and really send him to the Detroit Lions just to finish off his career, just forget about him. But he gets a ton of credit from me just for reinventing himself, being a starting caliber quarterback, probably one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC, and really leading this young group of talented players alongside head coach Dan Campbell as well, and the job general manager Brad Holmes has done. Those three, I think, have really led this charge for the Detroit Lions. Now, probably, presumably, for the next 4 to 5 years, with how long Jared Goff got this deal for, 4 years, probably takes him to about 34, 33 years old. So now you get a very good window where Jared Goff, because 33, 34 years old isn't really old like you would look at a running back or a wide receiver who's 34 years old. For a quarterback, they barely get hit. They barely take any wear and tear on their bodies nowadays with the rules and everything. Their arm stays pretty much strong if they continue their routine and working it out like normal. They could play up until 38, 37 years old. So now you get a very good window now here for the Lions with Amon-Ra sort of ascending into his prime. Aiden Hutchinson taking that massive step last season. Penny Sewell, you still have that offensive line there. You found a gem in Jahmyr Gibbs. This team really, it's hard to say just coming off of last year how well they performed, to say now that they could get even better, to have that next step potentially to make a Super Bowl appearance. I don't think that's too crazy to say. Now that they've figured out their star wide receiver, star offensive lineman, their quarterback now is set for the next 4 years. This is a great opportunity for them to keep going with this. And I think also something else to point out that I think really drove the point home for the Lions to believe in Jared Goff, for the whole city of Detroit to really just hone in on Jared Goff, is about a month ago, give or take a few days, a few weeks, there was an interview Jared Goff did with some news outlet talking about this idea of the Detroit Lions being this underdog team. They're always considered the underdog, and they're always just surprising people, right? It was a surprise that they made it that far last year. He basically said that his whole goal, his idea with local media and just people locally in Detroit was to try and change their perspective, their mindset from being this underdog, just always counting yourself out before anything happens, to, sarcastically joking around saying, that this team is good now. Like, hey, we're not the underdog anymore. We're a very good team, and we're going to continue to be a good team. That sort of mindset, that sort of idea that he brought out in that interview that he did a few weeks ago, I think spoke volumes to what he's really trying to do there in Detroit, what he has been trying to do there since he got there, building that culture, that team up from very, very far below the standard of a contending team to now where it is now. It's very impressive to say he's leading the charge along with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, like I said, and just having that idea, that goal in mind to not only rejuvenate your career but also take this Detroit Lions team to a place that they haven't been in decades. I think really, if I was Brad Holmes and I saw that, which I'm sure he did, I think that would speak volumes, and obviously why they extended him. I agree with him wholeheartedly. And now, looking past it, it seems like they've checked off everything on their to-do list this offseason. And how this affects their team, it just really gets everything out of the way that's not football related. You move on to this season, focus on trying to get to the NFC Championship game, one, and also trying to get further by and get maybe to a Super Bowl this season. We don't know how it all plays out, but I think they have a great chance of doing that. And also how this affects the rest of the NFL. That's an interesting topic to talk about another day. I'm sure I'll bring it up at some point this week. How does this contract extension now affect Jordan Love? He's eligible for an extension. Does he reset the market? Will the Cowboys finally pay Dak Prescott if they feel that he's worth at least the same as Jared Goff, trying not to reset the market? Or do they go above that $55 million per year threshold set by Joe Burrow and reset the market and just give Dak Prescott a massive contract? How does that affect business with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons? It opens up a whole box of questions now. With the Lions jumping the line and extending their quarterback, it puts these other teams in a bit of a race now to try and extend their quarterbacks, not trying to overpay, reset the market, and trying to beat out their competitors to get a valuable deal for their quarterback. But that will all, I'm sure, play out in the coming weeks. Jared Goff, again, gets that massive deal that I think is well-deserved. Now the Lions can really just hone in on football and reclaiming their NFC North title in 2024. But anyway, coming up on the rest of the show, I mentioned Caleb Williams starting his journey in the NFC North. He has been shining this past weekend at rookie minicamp, so we're going to get into that. Plus, Logan Ryan, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, talks about why Brock Purdy deserves a massive extension next offseason. Plus, we're going to talk about another rookie quarterback, again in the NFC North, in J.J. McCarthy, and how he also has been turning heads in rookie minicamp this past weekend. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.